and welcome to Voices from the Village. I'm Steve Pleich, and I'll be your host. This is one of our favorite shows of the year because we get to look at some of the trailers and get an idea of what the wonderful people at the Real Work Mayday Labor Film Festival have in store for us this year. Always scores, hosts of movies to inspire, educate, and delight. So we're really happy to have people here who do all the good work to bring you all of these films. Jeffrey Smedberg, welcome back.
Thank you, Steve.
And Sarah Ringler. Sarah, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
And Jeffrey, we were just talking about you had retired from the county, and you were previously with the SEIU, but you're still the president of the Troublemakers Union, as I understand it.
Right. Right. So I'm wearing my Troublemakers Union shirt tonight, although I could be wearing my SEIU shirt.
Yes.
Although I'm no longer working at the county, I'm still an active member of my union in the retirees chapter.
Wonderful, wonderful. A very strong union here in the city. We're really proud of them and the work they do to continue to do on behalf of the labor force here. And really that's what we're talking about is the laborers, the men and women, you know, who pick our vegetables, who do our work, who day to day really provide the things that make our lives, that give the quality to our lives and substance. So we're really happy to have you here again this year. Jeffrey and Sarah, either one of you, just give us a little background about the film festival, your involvement with it, and it's been going on for many, many years now. So give our audience a little bit of an idea of where we are with that.
Right. This is our 18th year.
My goodness, yeah.
And we started out in my own union while I was an active member of the union. Some of the women, very active women in the retirees chapter at that time, thought, gee, you know, some of our union members don't know anything about labor history. They don't understand why we have a 5-day work week, why we have the weekend, or why we have an 8-hour day, why we have paid health benefits through being a worker. So they thought, well, we could show some movies at lunchtime and make a little money for our retirees chapter.
Interesting. Yeah.
And the idea just caught on, and we never did lunchtime movies for the retirees. We just went full blown to the Nickelodeon Theater the first year.
And Sarah, you've been with the Real Work Film Festival for quite a while yourself.
Yeah, from about the beginning, as soon as I heard about it, and I thought that's really a great thing to be involved with, so I jumped in and I've done what I could for most of the shows that I've done have been out in Watsonville because I'm part of the Pajaro Valley Teachers.
Okay, that's right, yeah.
And I'm part of that. And I'm the vice president of the retirees chapter right now since I retired 3 years ago. So we always have an event in Watsonville, and usually it's at Cabrillo, Watsonville. It's been other places too.
But I noticed from your wonderful brochure, really look for this around town. If you can just get a little taste of this, it's fantastic. Gives you kind of a synopsis of the movies that you're being shown and the sponsors, because each one of these films, we hasten to say, is sponsored by a particular group. There are discussions surrounding the film itself. So it's really an evening of kind of expanding your consciousness and awareness of what labor means to all of us, as I say, improving the quality of our lives, and as you say, the history of it, providing us with the 40-hour work week, and you know, that kind of thing is so important.
Right.
And these are going to run through May 4th, so you're going to get an opportunity to see as many as you like, really.
Right. Our idea here is really to promote the history and the culture and the struggles of the working people and the working people's movements, including labor unions. But you mentioned at the beginning, you know, working people picking our vegetables or, you know, checking our groceries at the store. But really, almost everybody in the United States is a worker. Yeah. And a lot of people don't think of themselves as workers. They think of themselves as, supervisors or managers, you know, but they're still working. They're still exchanging the value of their labor for pay. And the labor movement today in the United States is not nearly as strong as it has been in the past. In the 50s, about 1 in every 3 working people was a member of a labor union. and today it's more like 12%, I think, 12 or 13%. However, still, labor unions are the most organized and strongest voice on behalf of all working people in the United States.
Yeah. And I know, Sarah, you can speak to the fact that the teachers' unions here in California are particularly strong and particularly fierce, you know, in their presentations for the workers.
Yes, there has been, not only in California, but all over the United States. There's been a real rise up of teachers and their unions trying to get some salary back, get some workplace, smaller class size. California is pretty strong. We did have that Janus decision, which made it a little more difficult to get members. But in the case of our union, we gained members. So and I don't know for the whole state what it is, but when people realize what a union is and how it really gives them some protection and support, people tend to fall for it and are happy to pay their dues and happy to be to do what they could do to support it. And that's been borne out despite this decision that was trying to take our members away and make it harder to organize and get dues.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, as I said at the top of the show, there are a host of movies really to educate, inspire, and really let people raise their consciousness, I think, around labor. As unfortunately, I don't think we do it often enough on a yearly basis to really appreciate the fact, as you say, many of us, almost all of us, are workers. And so we gain more of an appreciation for that. Let's go ahead and look at the first film that you're going to be talking about is Adios Amor, The Search for Maria Bueno. So tell us a little bit about that, and we'll see the clip and give us a little synopsis.
I'll speak on that because it will be playing in Santa Cruz at the Grange, I believe, right?
Right.
But it's also going to be 2 days later, next Friday, at the Cabrillo Watsonville. So it's a film by director Lori Coyle, who heard about this woman who was the first farm worker hired as an organizer in this case by the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee. And she heard little bits of her name kept coming out, and she was very curious to find this woman and had a lot of trouble. You know, the name kind of disappeared. It would come up over here in some old newspaper, yellow piece of newspaper. So the film is about her search and her finding this woman, Maria Moreno, who she worked for the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee, which was led by Larry Italong, a Filipino-American labor organizer from the 30s and 40s and 50s. And then later, AWOC combined with Cesar Chavez, and they became part of the AFL-CIO in 1972 and became part of the AFL-CIO. So she really was on the cutting edge of being out there in the fields, working with finding where there was need and trying to organize around workers' rights. Her father was a Pentecostal minister.
Really? So
that's how she seemed to have developed his sense of being able to speak, get people to listen, and to be a leader. And that was part of what made her a strong labor leader, because she wasn't afraid to speak up loudly. Apparently, according to Coyle, Cesar Chavez was considered her a rival, so kind of kept her at bay. Yeah, so that was an interesting part. And at one point, she was fired for expense accounts violation, which, according to Coyle, was also a way of getting rid of, if you had somebody in your union working for them that you didn't like, you'd accuse them of that. So she dropped out of the union movement at that point, but she became a Pentecostal minister and worked both sides of the border, and still worked with farm workers and both sides, and as a preacher, but also as a supporter.
Wonderful.
So Lori Coyle finds the family, and then the movie goes around the family talking about, and others as well, but her daughters and sons talking about what their mom was like, how they lived on barely nothing, and it's a story of a person who was just really this Maria Moreno was very dedicated to what she wanted to do, help
Well,
people.
give us some great context. Again, that's going to be shown at the Live Oak Grange on Wednesday, April 24th. So we want to make sure people know about that. Why don't we see that?
And then again,
Please,
it's going to be shown Friday, April 26th
Good.
in Watsonville.
Beautiful. Well, let's see the clip, and we'll come back and talk a little more about it.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
My name is Maria Moreno. I'm a mother of 12 children. We start working real early in the morning that the children don't have enough sleep, don't even have enough to eat, not even clothing. I have a lot of things to say on agriculture workers, the way we work, the way we suffer, the way we've been treated.
She was fearless.
She could move a group. She'd have these people in tears telling her story.
She wasn't afraid to say whatever she had to say, whether it was a politician or a worker or whatever.
She was a pain in the ass, and she would not back off.
Here's my mother's second grade education, and she's doing this. It was just like, wow, it blew me away.
I guess we got rights, and it's time to ask for justice.
And then one day she disappeared, and I don't know what happened.
¿Conoce usted a María Moreno? ¿Dónde podría localizarse?
There are 273 listings for Maria Moreno.
That's it.
Oh, right here, there it is. Oh, my goodness.
This is too much. This here is me. And I'm wondering why I was frowning.
I like this one. This is so pretty.
This one. I think this was taken in I'm 73 years old, and I miss my mother still. Up there. Oh, people. Look at how beautiful.
And the house is right about here. Yep.
Yes, I'm going home, and there is nothing.
The road is our home. The ground is our table. Any place we go, there's our home.
Praise God, I am going home.
I'm an American citizen, and I'm talking for justice.
And as Jeffrey mentioned, it's also going to be Friday, April 26th, Cabrillo College, Watsonville Forum. And Sarah, you were saying this is part of a larger Women in the Labor Movement presentation.
Right. Our theme for the Friday show is going to be Women in the Union. So we're even though women are over 51% of the population and 47% of the labor force in the United States, there's never been an AFL-CIO president that's a woman. And there are also 60 unions that fall under the AFL-CIO, and only 10% of them are have presidents that are women. Mm-hmm. And my union does, AFT, which has Randy Weingarten. So that was the theme through Maria's story, doing all the work that she did with no honor, no prestige, nothing. And then we're also showing another 4 films done by the in Texas by the by a group from Austin, University of Texas at Austin. They did 4 films on some women who one's the pecan strikers. They're 4 50-minute pieces that are pretty lively. One is this Alberta Snid, who was the largest worker strike in the Southwest in the 1930s. And that was the 1938 pecan shellers strike in San Antonio. And I imagine pecans probably are shelled by machine now, but anyway, it was done by people, and those women went on strike. And then also at a time way far ago when clothes were made in the United States, is that the other 3 50-minute films are about the garment workers one of them in Dallas, one in Laredo. And these are quick films. They're personable. They're funny. They're they're inspiring to women, and the respect that women deserve.
Well, it's wonderful because the history of women in labor is so rich. And Jeffrey, you were saying that there is a larger context, an overview of labor movement, and in particular reflected in the Real Work Film Festival itself.
Well, right. I just wanted to get an overview of the whole festival.
Please.
As I mentioned, this is our 18th year.
Yeah.
And this year, and the way we organize it is we have a core group, but then representatives of community organizations or labor unions that have a particular issue that they would like to publicize. They join us and they host one of our events. And there were so many groups this year that we started on, we've already had 2 shows. We started on last Sunday on April 7th, and we had another one last Thursday. Then we have a little break starting Monday, April 22nd. Then we're going to have a show every single night through May the 4th. A total of 20 different events in 2 counties. We have some shows in Monterey County as well as Santa Cruz County. 25 films shown throughout this period of time. And so we're only going to, and Steve, you pointed out this beautiful brochure.
Fantastic, yeah.
And all this information is also on our website, ReelWork.org.
And
so people who have not come across the printed program can find out about it on the website. And we won't have time to talk about every single event tonight. So
no, we're going to stay as long as we need to talk about that. The crew and the studio supervisor, everybody is committed to being here as long as it takes. But no, this is really wonderful, and people who haven't had an opportunity to take in any of these films, for instance, you were talking about groups that come in and sponsor particular films. I'm proud to say that the ACLU of Santa Cruz County is sponsoring a film that we will be able to preview here a little bit later. But it's wonderful, the total engagement of the community in this particular film festival. It is a community-wide event, and you can go in the urban core to the Nick or the Del Mar or the RCNV and see many of these films and take in as many as you like.
Right.
Yeah. Let's move on to a second film. Now, this is Paris to Pittsburgh.
Right. So this event is going to be on Thursday, April 25th at Cabrillo College, the main forum in the middle of the upper campus, forum room 450. And its main sponsors are Temple Beth-El and the Cabrillo College Sustainability Council. And this film is being shown during this period of time all over the United States.
So I understand, yeah.
We're also going to be showing the same film at the Ocio Theater in Monterey. I think actually Tuesday on the 23rd. So this film is about it's about climate change, and the title Paris to Pittsburgh. It starts out with a clip of Donald Trump right after he'd pulled the United States out of the Paris Accords. Finally, you know, international community agreed to, you know, some minimal accountability in terms of how we were going to reduce greenhouse gases and mitigate climate change. And so Donald Trump pulled us out, and so the film starts with him saying, I'm not president of Paris, I'm president of the United States, where Pittsburgh is, and so I don't care about what they do in Paris, I care about what they do in Pittsburgh. And then it goes into the mayor of Pittsburgh talking about how the city of Pittsburgh has agreed to follow the protocol outlined in the Paris Accords.
Is that right?
And they mention many cities in the United States that have agreed that they're going to do everything in their power to follow the Paris Accords agreement, in spite of the fact that the federal government is not providing any support for this.
And speaking of really the prestige that surrounds a lot of these particular events, the speaker for this particular film is John Laird, who's a former Secretary of Natural Resources here in California. So wonderful to have, you know, people who know these subject matter come in and conduct, and that I've been to these are very lively discussions amongst people to go and have an opportunity to see the film. So let's see that clip, Paris to Pittsburgh, and then we'll come back and chat about it a little more.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris.
Pittsburgh. Now, what was upsetting about that, and that alliteration, was a stereotype of our past.
But Pittsburgh is poised and ready to lead in the 21st century.
We're seeing cities and states and companies and individuals saying we are still in, even with the president pulling us out of one of the most important treaties, when every other major country in the world has said we are going to come together and commit to dealing with climate change.
I continue to be shocked at how close the water is encroaching just on the beach. Sea level rise is completely apparent in Miami.
We had 6.5 foot of water on the main level of the house for over a week. Stuff that was in our bedroom wound up in the garage, and stuff that was in the garage, I imagine that's way down in Louisiana now.
The storms are becoming stronger in Puerto Rico. The worst thing is to think that that reality will repeat.
Not a lot survived that fire in Ventura County. It burned so hot that everything just liquefied. To not be able to save anything was just really hard.
If we're going to avoid breaching catastrophic levels of warming, we need to be putting our foot on the renewable energy acceleration pedal.
The transformation towards a renewable energy future is the greatest economic opportunity of the 21st century.
Businesses have lined up to say we're still committing to the Paris Accord because it's good for their bottom line.
My daughter Faith, she made the decision that wind was where she wanted to be. This is an opportunity that hasn't been available in America for a long, long time.
The solar industry is offering that second chance opportunity to individuals like myself.
It doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, you have a role to play here.
And if we look at it as an American Marshall Plan, we can exceed the goals of the Paris Agreement.
This is the start of us taking control of our future.
We have the right to a future. We have the right to these basic necessities that we need to live. We, the people, need to take action. Our lives are at stake here.
And that's one that I think I'm going to want to take in myself. And the one thing that I always is remarkable to me when we do this show is the high quality, the production values in all of these films. It's just wonderful, that you see these films that are so professionally made, and the information is so cogently and understandably presented that it really makes one want to go and say, oh, now I understand a little bit more about, how climate change is related to labor, how this is related to that, the holistic kind of approach.
Right. Well, we hope that the information is presented, as you say, cogently. Not all the films are very high production values, because if there's a film about a good topic that's that we had to download from YouTube, we'll go with it.
There you go.
We do our best.
Leave no stone unturned to bring
we do our best to do high quality, but we'll take what we've got. Now, the first film that we saw the preview or the trailer for about Maria Moreno, obviously she was a labor organizer, so that's obviously fits in the category of labor film. It's about a labor union and organizing for working people. And under climate change, this film, Paris to Pittsburgh, what's the labor connection? So I just want to explain that, our criteria for how we pick films. If it's a film about terrible sweatshop conditions in Thailand or someplace, and how these workers suffer, and that's the end, it's just showing that. We're not going to show that film. We're going to show a film that shows people dealing with a difficult situation and figuring out how, through combined joint action, they can do something about it. And obviously labor organizing, forming a union is one way that people do it. But that's really the key that makes something fit our criteria is that organizing aspect, and whether it or not it's a labor union is not critical. So the last thing we heard in the trailer about Paris to Pittsburgh, the woman's voice was, "We're going to do something about this." So this is really a film that's trying to encourage people to take action nationally on this topic. And obviously, there are many cities and leaders in those cities who are doing something like that. We also like at each event to pose a question or a situation to the audience and show with the discussion afterwards and the speaker or maybe a panel discuss how that theme in the film relates to us here today and what kind of local action we can take right now on that topic.
And certainly you aren't able to screen all the films that you would review in terms of, you know, culling down the ones that you think are most you know, appropriate for your particular film festival. How many films would you say that the committee has an opportunity to screen whilst they're kind of making their determinations, as you say, about how they fit the kind of the mission of the Real Work?
Right. I think we considered 50 or maybe 60.
Is that right?
Something like that,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all on Google Docs or something like that. There were quite a few.
Yeah.
Some long, some really long.
Yeah.
So our review process is interesting. Our review process.
You get the real nuts and bolts here. The Voice of the Village goes a step further and goes.
We have meetings starting at the beginning of each year, and we get together and share some food, and then we start watching some films or maybe just the trailers, and we'll watch. If we get the whole film, we'll watch the first 10 minutes and cut it off, and after 10 minutes, if people say, "Oh no, you turned it off. I really wanted to know what's happening next."
There you go. That's a pretty good barometer.
Then that's a potential entry into the film festival. And if after 10 minutes they say, "I'm glad that's over,"
let's move on.
we don't consider it any further.
And hoping that's not the audience reaction when they say, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah, right.
So that's
Well, and the other criteria too is somebody who wants to promote it. In the case of ACLU or in the case of our union, that's another thing too.
Yeah.
So there's kind of the two things. One, is it going to be a good film, and then is somebody willing to run with it and believes in it enough to put together a show.
Interesting.
So.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely required.
Interesting perspective. The third film that we're going to see a clip of this is fascinating to me. It's called Fierce Light. And just a short description is that fueled by the belief that another world is possible, the filmmaker takes us on an inspiring journey into what Martin Luther King called love in action and Gandhi called soul force. Here it's called Fierce Light. So do you have something you want to mention about before
I'll
we
say
see
a few
it?
things about it. First of all, it took me a while to realize that the filmmaker, the name he goes by, I don't think he was christened this, but the name he goes by is Velcro Ripper.
I saw that on here, so I was wondering whether or not
name,
that
but
was, you know.
but he certainly has the craft of filmmaking down. It's a very well put together film, and he travels all around the world.
Really?
And this is probably stretching our real work criteria in a certain direction more than we have before, because it's people who are coming at social justice from a very spiritual point of view. And he, Thich Nhat Hanh is in there, and other well-known spiritual people who say, this is, if I'm meditating and there's somebody outside screaming, should I really focus on my meditation and so that I can ignore what's around me? Or since I'm in the world, should I do something about this?
Well, I think it's important really to explore the nexus between social justice and the labor movement. And I think maybe this film is an opportunity to do some of that. Let's take a look at that clip, and we'll come back and maybe have an opportunity to chat about it a bit more.
For the first time, I'm questioning the two driving forces of my life. The outward activist part of me, and my quest to understand my inner self, what some people call spirituality. I'm setting out to discover what happens when spirit meets action.
I've got to get active. I've got to do something. I got to put some feet up under these prayers.
I am because you are. There is no space between human beings. And what I do to you, essentially, I do to myself.
I am here. I am human. I was not born to fight you. I was born to live and be free.
We're here because we're pulled by a compelling vision of a world that works for everyone.
We will be here until there's a resolution, and a resolution in terms of the people, the people's resolution. Thank you.
It's not about something later on. It's who I'm showing up as right here, right now, every moment of every day. And that's the only place hope lives.
We're one family, one people. We're citizens of the world, citizens of this planet.
And you saw that that was an award winner at the Vancouver Festival, and I was asking Jeffrey if other films from other film festivals kind of come to your attention that way, that you've seen them and maybe something you would consider, you know, from others.
Right. So we are connected to a network of labor film festivals. There's a dozen or so around the world, and we share information. If someone sees a really good film, they'll let us know. I can't offhand think of which films, but we got some films from that avenue. We are official film festival. We post on some film festival websites, and we get a few films submitted that way. Yes. And then the community groups may have a film that they're aware of, and they bring that to us.
Well, I didn't know that there was a brotherhood or sisterhood of labor film festival people, so that's wonderful.
So in this case, this is an interesting collaboration. I say we work with other community groups, and this is the first time we've collaborated with the Wisdom Center, which is a spiritual gathering place downtown Santa Cruz, and they started doing a monthly film.
Now, where exactly is the Wisdom Center?
It's in the Galleria.
Okay, all
right behind Mobo Sushi.
Okay, wonderful.
And you know, so they knew about Real Work, and they thought, oh well, maybe our monthly film is going to be right in the middle of Real Work. Maybe we could find a crossover film that is a spiritual film and is also a social justice action film, and they found one.
As I say, it's a fascinating nexus between social justice and labor. Let's move on then. The fourth film we're going to talk about and see a clip for is The Judge, which will be screening Saturday, April 27th at the Resource Center for Nonviolence. So you want to give us a little taste of, foretaste of that?
Right. Couple of films this year. We're collaborating with the Muslim Solidarity
That's
Group.
Wonderful. I'm really delighted to see that you're doing that. Yeah.
Right, right. The first film in our series was last Sunday called Disturbing the Peace, and that was about former combatants from Gaza and Israel Defense Forces. And people who'd been through fighting with each other and managed to figure out that this was not really going to lead to anywhere, and they've gotten together and created an organization called Combatants for Peace. That was a very powerful movie. The Judge is about the first woman who was appointed to be a judge in Middle East religious courts. Very unusual, and you know, I haven't seen this whole film, so I'm really interested to see how it is that she became, that she got to that status. And, you know, so it's about, partly it's about her role as a woman in sort of this this court structure workplace. So that's part of it. It's sort of a women's liberation kind of theme, and she's challenging some of the traditions, the religious traditions that really treat people differently, you know, according to gender. So,
well, I'm particularly delighted, as I say, to see this film come before the screening public, because as an activist in Santa Cruz, it's only been in recent times that we've seen a Muslim solidarity groups come to the fore and actually be involved in some of the social justice activities taking part around town. And it is about women's rights. It is about religious freedom. It is about the things that, that oftentimes we really haven't considered when we're talking about the Islamic states and things that happen that are so much in our consciousness, but so really little understood, I think, oftentimes.
Right.
So let's see that film clip if we can. The Judge, again, Saturday, April 27th at the Resource Center for Nonviolence.
والله العظيم زوجي قد تركني بلا نفقة ولا منفق والله على ما أقول وكيل وشهيد. بيجي القديم يجي القديم بقول لك أبصر باخذها وبيت الطاعة وبطلقها وبطلع لها شو هذا الحكي مش سهل. شايفة؟
ما احنا العدالة ما احنا
لماذا لم تتعين المرأة في القضاء الشرعي؟ بحكم العادات والتقاليد. مين اللي وضع العادات والتقاليد؟
في مجتمعاتنا الشرقية العادات والتقاليد أصبحت أقوى من الأحكام الشرعية.
وأن أحكم بين الناس بالعدل.
It worries me to have Sharia courts. They were primarily male and they were very unjust to women.
وكانت هي جريئة. قالت لي أكثر من مرة نريد نحن كالنساء أن نتولى مناصب القضاء كالرجال.
هذا يترتب عليه مفاسد كثيرة لا تتوافق مع الأسس الشرعية.
أنا اليوم بالقرن ال21 مش ضروري أطبق إشي كان بالقرن العاشر.
المقاضي محامي يا أبوي المحامي.
أنا ضد أن تكون قاضي يعني لحالها تحكم بعض المواضيع.
قبل الإسلام المرأة كانت حقوقها مهضومة.
المرأة كمنصوبة
الرجل يسجن بين العقل والقلب عنده، فبتكون أحكامه أكثر صواب من المرأة.
Interpretation of Islamic law is profoundly different. You can have a woman president in one country and women not allowed to drive in another.
برا تقاتلوا عندي لا. هي اللي متأثرة، هي اللي ما ذكرنا لها شيء الحصص، فهي اللي بتقدر ترفع الدعوة. زوجها سادي في علاقته الجنسية معها، فكيف تعطي تفاصيل هذا العنف لرجل آخر وهو القاضي؟
ما جرى مع القاضية خلود هو نتيجة لإبلاغها عن مظاهر الفساد التي كانت في القضاء الشرعي.
إذا ما حققتش العدالة لنفسي مش راح أحققها للناس.
صرت نجمي ضوت العيون نار بنور حرف النور.
And another reason why I love doing this show, not only working again with Jeffrey and Sarah, is I get to test drive all these these films and see the trailers and the clips and decide kind of which ones that I want to go see. And then this is certainly one that I would love to go see.
You mean you're not going to go see
them
all?
Well, attempt to go, and Your Honor, I'll attempt to go see them all. Yes, Jeffrey. But you were saying that these also, the clips and the trailers appear on the website. So people,
right.
You know, not only just myself here, we're fortunate enough to see them here, but you all at home can see those as well.
Right, and we have trailers on there for most of the 20 films that we're going to, or the 25 films that we're going to show. Yeah.
No, this this should be wonderful. Anything more you'd like to say about this particular film?
No, but I'd like to see it too. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
The next day, that's Saturday, April 27th at the Resource Center. The very next day, Sunday, April 28th, which is Workers' Memorial Day.
Oh, okay.
We try to always recognize that day every year. We're going to be showing a film, This Is What Democracy Looks Like, and another shorter film. This is actually a celebration of the 20th anniversary of the battle in Seattle, which was the WTO protests. And I just want to mention it here, two films that were made during those protests. One, a shorter film by the local plumbers union, which actually sent a contingent up to Seattle to participate. But the reason why I'm mentioning it as a 20th anniversary, we're hoping to have a panel of all the people in the community who are still around here who participated, who went to Seattle in 1999 and participated in that. So if anyone is out in the audience,
please, there you go.
And was in Seattle for those demonstrations, we'd love to hear from you. And
you know, it's interesting. Actually, the father of Voice from the Village, Charlie Phillips, who we all know and love, gone now, he was in Seattle in WTO. And we had some wonderful footage with him when we did a tribute to Charlie shortly after his passing, and his hat and his microphone and all of the tear gas and whatnot. So, you know, this is to Charlie as well. Is it, you know, a fond remembrance.
Right.
Yeah, well, it was a union event too. I mean, that was part of the. There was the blockading of the center there, but there was preceded by a union march, and my union, Pajaro Valley teachers sent me up for that too.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so I was there as well, and I know there's many people out there in the community who we work together to.
Another one of our longtime community activists, no longer with us, Ruth Hunter.
Absolutely.
I saw her get tear gas. It was terrible.
Interesting. Yeah, fantastic.
Well, if you can find those clips of Charlie Phillips,
I will endeavor to look in the archives.
We'll add that to the program.
That was
that would be wonderful.
Yeah, just as an aside, This Is What Democracy Looked Like was one of our favorite chants during the Occupy. I mean, that's really said it all for us, so we really enjoyed that. The next film we're going to take a look at, and this is one that's sponsored by, I'm proud to say, the ACLU of Santa Cruz County and the NAACP of Santa Cruz County, The Long Shadow. You want to tell us a bit about that before we see the clip, perhaps?
Right. So that's actually going to be on May 1st, May Day, International Workers' Day. Every year throughout the world, that's a holiday in many countries. It's the real Labor Day, and we call our full title is Real Work May Day Labor Film Festival.
Absolutely, right at the top of the show. Make sure to get all the words.
Because we always have our festival right around the week when May Day occurs. We're trying to reestablish the prominence of the real Labor Day.
Hey, you know, as a younger activist, I happened to be in Europe this is many years ago, and it was on May Day, Labor Day. I never realized, you know, the solidarity between students and labor there, and it was unbelievable. I was in Paris, in fact, and it was an eye-opening experience for me just to see the kind of international solidarity that exists in Europe, anyway, between students and labor. And over the years, I think we've engendered some of that solidarity here. I think students and labor are closer than they have been in past years. But it's interesting. So
the solidarity is very important on Labor Day, and the film that we're showing, The Long Shadow, talks about a very significant divisive tactic that has attempted to keep people apart, so to weaken us and weaken our power, and that is, of course, the institution of racism.
Absolutely, yeah.
And The Long Shadow is about how, even though slavery was outlawed and you know, theoretically, you know, race relations have improved, but just generations and generations, it takes so long for habits and ways of thinking that have been inculcated in our culture to really be rooted out. And so this film is about the process of trying to recognize how deeply rooted racism is, and the attempt of the filmmaker to deal with her own personal racist past.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing this film myself, but let's see a little clip of that and we'll come back and maybe we'll talk about it a bit more.
I was born in Greensboro, North Carolina, into a world where white superiority was rarely questioned. I knew both sides of my family owned slaves. I never understood how much my own uncomfortable journey was connected to an untold history.
You can't understand United States history without understanding the role that slavery played. It actually defined the nation.
Almost every founding father was a slave owner. It was just completely integrated into the thinking of the wealthy men that wrote the Constitution.
The Southern colonies were not willing to be part of a union unless the institution of slavery was protected, and the price of protecting that institution was disproportionate power to the South, and it carries through today.
They're mad. I'm mad. We should all be mad because of what's going on right now.
We're still suffering the after effects of those two powerful regimes that comprise the bulk of U.S. history, slavery and Jim Crow. This culture is still punishing and penalizing Africans with no attempt to connect the dots between slavery, Jim Crow, and the present. It's criminal.
We had it exactly backwards in terms of the Negro problem. We have a white problem in the United States, and it's reflected in our politics, the way we do our economy, and the way we think about ourselves.
Yeah, as I say, I'm looking forward to seeing this film. As you know, I sit on the steering committee for the Santa Cruz County Community Coalition to Overcome Racism. And one of the things we've learned through our trainings is how inculcated white privilege is in our society and how divisive race can be. And Sarah, you were mentioning how our present administration uses race to divide the nation.
As an effective tool.
Yeah. Right. So you're going to tell us about the cost. This is is this going to be prohibitively expensive for me to see every one of these movies?
What it costs to go to this is well, I said free, but Jeffrey said by donation.
Okay.
So, you know, we would like some financial help if you would like to, but you don't have to. And if you, I think it's more important that you come and educate yourself and see a different kind of film than you would ever see, you know, normally in your life. So I think it's worth coming.
Yeah.
But Jeffrey did want to add something else about how we get funded for this.
Right, about our audience's contributions at the door from our audiences is an important part of what funds the festival, and that may maybe contribute a third to a half of our budget. But our main solid funding comes from labor unions and community organizations. There are 20 different labor unions in this area that send us checks each year to support this public education event.
Yeah, and really, as I was saying, these are in terrific wonderful venues. If you've ever been to a show at the Nick or the Del Mar, it's extremely comfortable, you know, very nice venues, and also the other venues that will be screening some of these films are just terrific places to go and spend an evening, and as I say, you know, be educated and inspired by the films that you'll see. You want to talk about a few other things, as long as we have some time?
Well, I will mention that whenever possible, we invite the filmmakers or somebody who's been involved in the film to come and then perhaps introduce the film and lead a question and answer period afterward. For example, the film, I can't remember if you mentioned Lori Coyle.
Yeah, no, she's going to be there.
Who made the film Adios, Amor. She's going to be at both of those screenings.
Oh, really?
And in several other cases.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, with the Paris to Pittsburgh, you know, John Laird's going to be there. John, of course, community member for many, many years, and always interesting, you know, to have as a speaker and to facilitate a discussion about important issues, particularly related to climate change. So wonderful to have him.
Yeah, and our Pajaro Valley Teachers just elected a new president, a woman, Nellie Vaquera Boggs. So she's going to be at the Watsonville Adios Amor event and speak as well as the filmmaker Lori Coyle.
And I noticed that you know, no film festival would be complete without something related to healthcare and workers. And I noticed you've got something going on with that.
Actually, 2 events.
Please, tell us about that.
Yeah, on Tuesday, April 30th at the Resource Center for Nonviolence. We have a lot of shows at the Resource Center.
Yeah, another wonderful venue.
Sponsored by the National Union of Healthcare Workers, which is currently organizing mental health workers in the county. And they have a particular really hot campaign right now going at Janus of Santa Cruz. Interesting. So they have some film, video of the organizing campaign, and workers are going to be there speaking about their attempt to organize and get a good contract. I mean, you know, homelessness is a huge issue in Santa Cruz, in the whole county, and a lot of the people that are homeless also have other issues like mental health issues. And one reason that they are homeless is because they can't get services to get a handle on their mental health issues. And the turnover at Janus is almost 50% a year. I think that was the figure that I heard, because they don't really treat the workers well or compensate them enough to maintain a steady workforce. And if there's not steady, if a person with mental issues cannot have a stable counselor, you know, how are they going to make any progress?
And it's wonderful that you have this. You really to round out the program. I can tell you anecdotally that a 3 years ago, you screened a film on a single-payer healthcare. And I was more elucidated to seeing that film and understanding exactly what single payer was all about than I ever had anything that I'd read or seen anywhere else, because it was just a tremendous primer on what single payer healthcare means and how certain states have tried to institute that and what the barriers had been. But it was wonderful to have that and round that out, because that is such an important part of a laborer's life, but also, as you say, homeless folks who present with a mental and behavioral health problem or a physical health problem that they just can't get health care for. And that's important.
Also about Janus, not only do they do mental health, but they also do substance abuse counseling. They're very critical for that in the county, and many of the counselors have master's degrees and huge student loans as a result of that, and they're paid just slightly above minimum wage. So they're dedicated to what they do. They want to be dedicated, but they, you know, and plus the high cost of living in this area makes it very difficult for them. So we really want to support them through this film festival, because it's something local and it's something we can do to help people here.
And you're absolutely right. 2 weeks ago on Voices, we had Dr. Arnie Leff was here, who is the Chief Public Health Officer for the county, and he was singing the praises of his public health professionals here in Santa Cruz. You know, what a wonderful job they did, and what great service that they provide for the community. So it's worth, I think, maybe taking in a film like this just to kind of round out your dance card for things that you think are interesting and related to the labor movement, generally speaking.
Right. Well, I mentioned there were 2 events related to health care.
And you have another?
And the second one is on Friday, May 3rd. That's going to be at the London Nelson Community Center.
London Nelson, thank you very much.
Yes, I'm now committed to always calling it London Nelson.
Yes, indeed.
The true name of the person.
The sign will change.
Good for you.
Right. And there's a film we're going to show there called Power to Heal, which is a history of Medicare and the civil rights movement. Because Medicare was enacted in the 60s at the height of the civil rights movement. And at that time, you know, health care for Black people was much worse than health care for people with light skin. And so this kind of connects to the film The Long Shadow about racism. It was because of a government program, a government-sponsored healthcare program, which everybody's happy with, that through that, when they rolled out Medicare, because of pressure from the government, sponsored, really pushed by the by some of the practitioners, the African American doctors and nurses, they managed to set it up so that the hospitals throughout the South were forced to integrate. Before that, if you were sick and of different color, you couldn't get medical treatment in a hospital.
Well, Jeffrey, Smedberg, Sarah Ringler, thank you so much for being here once again this year. Folks, find these brochures. They're all over town. This is a wonderful community event that happens every year, an opportunity to really refresh your consciousness about the labor movement and how important it is to our society and to our lives and make it the quality of life that we can appreciate here in Santa Cruz County. Thank you so much, both of you, for your work. We look forward to seeing you at these venues and all these screenings. I'm going to have to change my calendar around so I can see all of them now. But thank you again for being here. Much appreciated for all your good works. And thank you for watching in this edition of Voice from the Village. Tune in a couple weeks from now when we'll bring you another show. And in memory of Charlie Phillips, who really was the founder of this Voice from the Village. Thank you, Charlie, and we'll try to find that clip so we can add it to Jeffrey's analog on it. So, thanks, folks. We'll see you next time. Good night.
Okay.
Well, thank you for making it so painless.
Absolutely.